Birmingham is a diverse city with an ever-growing population. As the city begins to grow and modernise, the issue of air quality will remain. Although the 1956 Clean Air Act has reduced the pollution concentrations, NOx still remains an issue in the city. NOx refers to the gaseous pollutants nitric oxide and nitrogen dioxide that are formed during the burning of fossil fuels from man-made sources. When we compare NOx at two different sites in Birmingham, such as the A4540 road site and the Acox Green suburban site, it is clear that the NOx limits set by the UK and the European Union are frequently broken. This is considered an air quality management issue impacting humans and the surrounding environment. Human health can be impacted when exposed to NOx. Research on the impacts show that short-term exposure is linked to breathing difficulties, with long-term exposure linked to decreasing lung function and even lung cancer. Acid rain formed from NOx can impact local ecosystems. Fish can die from increased surface water acidity, with vegetation death as a result of acidic rain. Buildings can also be damaged due to the reaction of materials with acid. The model shows the basic NOx behaviour processes in the environment, with the simplistic box representing the limits of the city. As emissions are released from sources such as vehicles, NOx can react to form other pollutants such as ozone and particulate matter, which also have impacts on human health and the local environment. Examples of NOx sources in Birmingham are transport, which include light and heavy vehicles, buses and trains, household heating and emissions from industrial activity. The graph shows a reduction in NOx emissions from sources over time. However, illustrate that vehicle emissions do make up the largest proportion of these sources and therefore are subject to mitigation strategies. From these sources, NOx can be removed through sinks such as rain. Wind can also affect the NOx concentrations by moving pollutants both into and away from the city. The European Commission introduced the 715/2007 EC Act that sets a limit of 80 mg per kilometre of NOx emissions for newly manufactured cars. In response to Dieselgate, where car manufacturers measured NOx levels incorrectly in a real driving environment, the European Commission set further legislation that introduced the real driving emissions test to ensure cars comply within the limits that they set previously. The introduction of the Clean Air Zone in 2020 will charge the most polluting vehicles, aiming to reduce the NOx levels in the city. Furthermore, the introduction of new cycle paths from suburban areas to the city and parking restrictions are used to encourage the use of cleaner methods of transport for commuting purposes. The council should introduce clean energy methods such as wind and solar energy to replace natural gas as the main energy source in the city. Buses that operate in the city could also be replaced by cleaner fuels such as hydrogen, following in the footsteps of London, where NOx emissions can be reduced by up to 15%. To encourage increased use of public transport, the council could offer incentives such as lower fare for public transport or cash incentives to leave cars on driveways. The public have the responsibility to consider using cleaner transport methods, such as cycling and the adoption of public transport to commute around the city. The impact of buses on NOx levels is significant. For every bus used, 30 cars will be replaced on the road, which will undoubtedly contribute to the further reduction in NOx emissions in the city.